You are listening to Stories from Real Life, a podcast by engaging storytellers for engaged story listeners. Here's your host, author and journalist, Melvin E. Edwards.
Hello and welcome to this episode of Stories from Real Life. I'm your host, Melvin E. Edwards, and I have a favor to ask you before we get started. Please subscribe or follow this podcast on Good Pods and rate this episode after you've listened to it. I would greatly appreciate that. Now, in today's episode, we have two leaders who are here to talk about their nonprofit organization and tell us how we can all get involved in it. Bryan Benz is the founder and CEO of Wholistic Transformation, and Pat Quinn is the chairman of the board of directors of that organization. They join us from Tucson, Arizona, where the organization is based. Gentlemen, thank you for being here today.
Thank you for having us.
Great to be here, Melvin. Looking forward to it.
Thank you. Their 501c3 nonprofit is focused on creating a vibrant relational community for those aging out of the foster care system. So I have a question for both of you, and Bryan, I'd like to direct it at you first and then to Pat. What motivated you to get involved in a ministry like this one?
I'm wanting to make a difference. I've always cared and had a desire to help others, but I want to help those who want to help themselves. And so I've spent some time overseas working as an international missionary, doing something we call holistic community development. And so I've had a heart to make a difference in people's lives.
Yeah, for me, I was intrigued about Bryan's efforts. We had met and he talked about creating this, and I like to get involved in different things now that I'm retired, and things that I think will make for change. You know, a lot of people do the easy stuff, you know, give money, give food, but the messy stuff is making those changes that are long lasting, and this was one of the many ways that I thought I could do that. So I love the idea.
Okay. And as I just mentioned, the short name for the organization is Wholistic Transformation, and holistic is spelled with a W. So can you tell us about the idea behind spelling the word holistically in that type of way? Obviously, you had something in mind when you chose that term.
Yeah, so first of all, the full name of the organization is Wholistic Transformation, changing hearts, minds, and communities. And I had to fight to get that name because everyone says, well, it's way too long, and I acknowledge. But the key words matter, and our goal is changing hearts and minds. And I would go so far as to say, if when we're trying to help others, if their heart and mind, if we're not working to change that, it doesn't make a lasting difference. And you mentioned holistic, and you notice that it's spelled with a W, and every time I type it in my computer, it tells me I'm spelling it wrong. But the W is to emphasize the whole person. And in my experience, a lot of good people are doing good things, but the tendency is to separate people's needs, their spiritual needs, their physical, their emotional, their social, and their environmental needs. And they want to specialize. It's just kind of like overwhelming. And if we want to go on the church side, oftentimes the church is focusing on the spiritual side, which is absolutely the most important thing, is someone's relationship with God. But oftentimes I feel that's not the starting place. The starting place, what I would say, is we have to build a relationship with those we're wanting to help, and we need to start where their felt need is. And then we need to constantly bring the love of Jesus into their lives. But if we would have a saying when I was working overseas, is that a hungry stomach has no ears. And so if you're not dealing with the need that they're hungry, there's not enough food, or their baby's sick, then they're not paying attention to you, and the change is not happening. We have something we call the harmony with God, and it's and I would make an argument that God cares. It's harmony with God, harmony with others, harmony with self, and harmony with creation, and that's what our focus is.
All right. So what makes your holistic transformation model unique from other post-foster care programs?
Well, I think there's a couple things. One, and I'd say the biggest is in our model, we're going to have 12 homes on 2 lots that we own, 12 one-bedroom homes, and we're going to have 2 navigators, what we call a resident navigator, live on site. And that navigator's responsibility is to work with those residents that are living there and towards restoring relationship, creating community, and then navigating the resources that are available in our community, whether it be financial literacy, whether it be trauma-informed care, life skill training, schooling, workforce development. And so that's a main difference there, is that the navigators living on site. And then we're trying something where we're going to have 1 resident per house. And the experience in most foster care environments is in a group home. Typically they share bedrooms. They've never had anything of their own. And so we started with the house. We start with a shipping container. But it's not about the house. It's not about the shipping container, but that's the starting place. You need stability. You need a place where you can sleep each and every night and feel safe to start the development process.
Well, you mentioned the term resident navigator. Can you tell me what type of role they provide?
Yeah, as I mentioned, I think I want to start and point out is in most social services work, case manager is what they use, and it makes a difference, because what does a case manager do? It manages case. And what does a navigator do? A navigator sitting in the passenger seat. The person they're working with is actually driving the car, is given the direction where they want to go, but the navigator comes alongside and helps with the efficiency and the best way to get where the driver wants to go. And that's really what this resident navigator is going to do, is going to live on site and help the residents go in the direction they want to go in. And so the resident's going to decide, do I want to go to school? Do I want to work? What is it that interests me? And the navigator is going to help come alongside and connect them to the resources that are available, to the schooling. We have a junior college here. We have a university. There's a tremendous amount of workforce development, technical training. Whatever it is their desire, however they see themselves in providing a living for themselves and eventually their family, the navigator is going to help them do that.
Yeah, and I'd like to point out how it empowers them to have control over their own life. A lot of research, and Melvin, you may have read some of this research about charity that doesn't have success. And a lot of it is top down. Someone thinks they're really smart, and they'll go to another community, another country, and say, this is the solution they need. And the real success is when you listen to them and what they think the solution should be. And I think that's the same kind of thing we're trying to accomplish here. We're trying to have those aging out of foster care run their own life with some guidance from someone, not being told what to do, but saying, hey, I've made a decision to go this direction. Can you help me with that direction? And that's what we want to help them do.
Well, in trying to determine what would be the best course of action for helping these young adults, how did you decide on housing as a way of helping those aging out of the foster care system?
Well, I think it starts with housing. We're in a crisis here in Pima County in Tucson, Arizona, an affordable housing crisis. There's simply not enough houses that are affordable for people. And again, as I mentioned, that you need a place to sleep. You need a roof over your head in order to develop, in order to move forward. And so the house is the starting place towards the development, towards the transformation. Just a quick story on the house. So our plan is we're using IKEA cabinets for the bathroom, for the kitchen, and the reason for that is the boxes are all the same, but you can choose 30 different doors and drawer facings. And so the people coming in are going to be able to choose to customize, if you will, their house for whatever style they want. We're going to have a built-in couch. We're going to have 5 or 6 different fabric choices. And so you think about that for someone who really has not had an opportunity to make a decision in their life. All of a sudden, they can pick the color of the fabric. They can pick the style of doors, and all of a sudden, you're empowering them, and you're giving them the feeling that they matter, that you value their opinion, and we want to follow along. And so, to me, and again, this is a test project. This is we call it a laboratory. I think that's the beginning place of changing the heart and the mind of those living there.
Yeah, and you've seen research with those that are already homeless that it starts with a home. They found that giving those other pieces weren't successful over the long term without a home. And so we're trying to prevent homelessness, but it's the same thing. We need to start with the home.
Okay. So what value does tiny home housing provide to these young adults?
Well, I think part of the story of the tiny home, of the shipping container, actually started about 3 years ago, because for me at the time, it was the least expensive building that you could start with. You could start with a structure that had a roof, had a floor, had 4 walls. You couldn't build anything for what you could buy a shipping container. Now, since that time, and the governor of Arizona used shipping containers and built a 3.5-mile wall along the Arizona-Mexican border. The federal government stepped in and required the wall to be taken down. And so we've been able to, we've bought 2 of the shipping containers from the state. And so the cost is, you couldn't replicate the 4 walls, the roof for that standpoint. And so, and there's a coolness factor in it. I mean, there's a cachet, if you will, of saying you're living in a shipping container. Now, one of the things we're doing that I think is really cool is we're insulating the outside. We're working with a local company to put, what do we got, like 4.5, 5 inches of foam on the outside. Keeping the walls inside will be the industrial look. And so the insulation factor is much greater, and the look is fantastic. It's going to be a Southwest Adobe look. And so it's going to be very, very cool. We'll do a synthetic stucco and paint on the outside. We'll have solar. We're harvesting rainwater, so it's very environmentally friendly. And the cost, we're estimating $45,000 a unit. We're able to do that because of the volunteer labor. We've connected with a multitude of people who are willing to help us construct them. And so I don't think you can, everything I've seen, you could not match our cost model with what anyone else is doing.
Yeah, when he mentions the insulation on the outside, it also gives you a little more space on the inside. You're not using the inside to have insulation. And, that steel could get pretty hot if it was exposed to the sun. But having the insulation, or I like to call it outsulation, since it's on the outside, is help preventing that problem. So again, by preventing, you're actually having more efficiency.
So, Pat, can you tell me a little bit more about the quality of the shipping container?
Well, it depends on situation. So our first container was a 40-foot container, which there is no terminology that's agreed on. So some use the term new. I put that in air quotes because it's really one trip. It came from China. It came to the United States, probably to Long Beach, California, but it came to the United States. And then we bought one of those, a one trip in really good condition. What we've bought from the state of Arizona that was previously used on the wall was something that had more trips and likely were either on top or on the bottom of a 2-story kind of situation. So they weren't well taken care of. So we've gone to both extremes. Plus we have something that's probably closer to that one trip. Two 20-footers were donated to us by GE Healthcare. So that gives us a variety of quality. And Bryan's a great team of construction folks and our lead construction guy have looked at what we have and think they all can work with what we have. And so we might be expanding in those directions.
Okay, that sounds good. So when you were starting, did you plan to go big or small in scope, and how did you come to that decision?
We planned to go small. Well, I guess I'll back up. We originally had an opportunity where we thought we could get 10 lots. And so we were going to go huge, and it was just overwhelming. We didn't think there's any way we could do it. And so then I finally, I said, let's just do 4. Let's do 4. We did get 2 lots that were donated by Bethel Community Baptist Church. And so we were just going to do 4. And then what happened is there's another organization, a nonprofit here in Tucson called Youth on Their Own, where it focuses on high school kids, homeless high school kids, and getting them through high school. And tremendous organization doing great work. And after the kids go through their program, they call them ambassadors. So these are 18, 19-year-olds, our target audience. In fact, some of their kids could have come through the foster care. But anyway, they graciously put together a focus group. We put the questions through, they asked. And one of the first questions was this idea about relationship and about community. And, I can hold up my phone here, and I would have told you beforehand that most 18, 19-year-olds think their phone is a relationship. Well, I'm old enough where I don't believe that. But the thing that really pleased me was that they valued the relationship. They were very excited about this opportunity of being in a community. Well, if you had three residents and 1 navigator, that's not much of a community. And so then we decided to go bigger, and we were going to go to 8 homes. We're going to use both lots. And then just a huge blessing with just literally probably a month ago, we learned we're in a special district in Tucson, which takes away the density restrictions. So now we're up to 12. We're up to 12 units. So there'll be 10 residents and two resident navigators. I think the other thing too in that focus group that came out was they were excited about the training opportunities. There's going to be huge requirements for these young adults to live in our community. We're looking for young people who want a hand up, not a handout. It's very important to me that they're engaged in their own development. And so I'm not going to tell you to go to school. I'm not going to tell you what kind of work you have to do, but I am going to tell you you have to go. You have to go to school. You have to work. You have to be doing something to develop yourself. And in order to help that, we're going to incentivize. So right now we're playing with the idea that rent is going to be $800 a month. But if you're doing trauma-informed training, it'll be $700. If you're going to school, it'll be $600. So each of these activities that we feel will be for the betterment of those people living there will reduce their rent. And so again, it's for them to discover themselves what are the necessary things that will lead to their success. One of the things we do, one of the standard things, Pat mentioned it a little bit, is, Melvin, if you listen to me, I'll fix you. If you just do what I tell you to do, but we know that doesn't work. Unless you determine for yourself what's going to lead to your success, it's not going to work. And so we can talk to people all day long, but they have to discover for themselves, and we're going to help them apply what they've learned and guide them down that path that's right for them.
Yeah, I love our concept of incentivizing good decisions. He went through a couple of them with the trauma care, but also they can get involved in the community garden, getting involved in our community. And training doesn't have to be college, but it could be college, so they can choose the type of the direction they want to go. So many positive choices would still be incentivized.
Okay, and how soon do you anticipate moving in the first group of young adults?
Well, my dream is November. I gave that to our architect here a couple of weeks ago, and he rolled his eyes and he said, well, if everything goes okay, we'll get it done. And I think part of this whole thing is a faith journey. I'm a person of faith. I'm doing this because I feel God has called me. And so if God wants it, if God agrees with me that November's the date, then that's what'll happen. But a lot of things have to come together in order for that to happen.
Okay, so I understand you mentioned your church donated the property. So what other roles do you see for your church or any church once people begin living in these tiny homes?
It's an amazing opportunity. I'm so excited. Our church has a rich history. We've been on that corner for 73 years, but we're struggling. We're a small church. Small churches in America are struggling. We're down to probably 35, 40 people. And what I see is a tremendous opportunity for the people of our church to connect with the residents and build relationships, build community. So one of the focal points of our community is going to be an outdoor eating area, an outdoor kitchen, outdoor dining. One of the things I see is every Sunday morning prior to our church time is in our community, the residents will be cooking breakfast for the church people, and we'll be sharing a meal together each Sunday morning. And so it'll just be continual opportunities. The church can be used for training opportunities. We have different classrooms. We have meeting space, if you will, for some of the training as we bring in other outside people to involve with the residents of the community.
Yeah, and the church people could celebrate birthdays with them. It is a win-win for both groups.
I think one other thing I want to add on that too is, and I hate to cast the big vision, but maybe the really big vision is that there's communities like this throughout our city, throughout our state, throughout our country. What would it be like if churches, nonprofit organizations had communities like this? And it doesn't, foster care is a huge need. Returning citizens, those coming out of prison, is another huge need where the outcomes, it's not working with what's happening. I'm working with a church here, very preliminary, who have a passion for the elderly. Right now, and the fastest growing homeless demographic is women over 65 years old. It's a crisis. And what if a church was to have a community of 6, 8, 10, 12 homes for the elderly? And so it could be for refugees. It could be for single moms, just going on and on as the possibilities, whatever the heart of that particular church is. And we would love to come alongside and help. We're trying to build the test here, but I would love to engage with and have conversations and share what we've learned to this stage with anyone who's interested.
All right. So what one thing do you wish people understood about the foster care system that would help them grasp the bigger picture here?
I think the difficulty, I think, can we imagine what it's like to be 4, 5, 6 years old in the state of Arizona, come in, an officer from the state, and pull you out of your home, take you away from your parents, and then all of a sudden you're a ward of the state. I just can't imagine the trauma and the sadness that each of these kids have gone through, and through what I would say is no fault of their own. And so I think that and I'm not critical of the state in any way of what they're trying to do. They're doing the best they can. And again, there's tremendous opportunities for all of us to get involved in the foster care system in some way. But there's just a huge need. And it comes down to relationship and community. It comes down to love. Can we love on these people? And the system is overwhelmed.
Yeah, I'd talk more about that trauma as well. Not only are you taken out, but you're hoping maybe to get back with your parents. And that hope is always held over them. And a parent may be relapsing in drugs or relapsing in crime, back in jail. They keep hoping someday they'll be together again. Or maybe they were abused and they're hoping never to get back together again. They're in a real traumatic situation, and they may be going into foster care and out again, back with the parents and back out again. They all have different journeys that are painful, and that kind of knocked me over as we've done research on this, the real strong need to give them something stable, something that they feel they have some control over.
Wow, that is traumatic. So when young people age out of the system, what typically happens to them?
I think we're going to start with the point that the term they use is emancipated, and that's not a good choice of words. Emancipation. When you think about that, I think about it in the 1860s with Abraham Lincoln freeing the slaves, and so. But that's the mindset. Is they feel they're tied to the state, and so at 18 they're free to leave. They become an adult. We hear stories of at midnight, at 12:01, that if they turn 18, they leave the home they're in, the group home they're in, and they have no place to go. Stats show that 20% of these young adults that are emancipated are immediately homeless. And if we go on, if we're going to talk about statistics, 45% of kids coming through the foster care system will end up incarcerated by the age of 24. Over 40% will be homeless. Over 40% will be unemployed. I think a shocking statistic, I think it's 77% of the young women between the age 18 and 21 will become pregnant, which perpetuates the brokenness of the system. And so what we're trying to do, we're trying to prevent those statistics. We're going to, one of the very, very tangible ways we're going to measure our success is if we have 10 residents and after a year, none of them are homeless and they're still there, then, typically 4 of them would be homeless. If 10 of them are working in some manner, we beat the odds. If the young women are not pregnant, we've been beat phenomenal odds, because the odds are if we had 10 women there, over 7 of them would end up pregnant. So those are some of the things. It's very key about preventing those horrible outcomes and changing the outcomes. And we believe we're going to change the outcomes by changing the hearts and the minds of those living there.
And at 18, we're talking about the situation where they leave, like he mentioned. They could be in high school, just months away from a diploma, and they decide to leave and not even get their high school diploma. I mean, that's how much they want to get away from the system. They could stay until 21, and they're choosing not to in some cases. So that's just a tough situation.
I think the other thing we have to acknowledge along the lines, each of us who are parents, we have to realize, I have a 26-year-old son. When he was 18, he made decisions that were not in his best interest. And so many of us can sit back and say, what in the world are these kids doing? But all of us have made bad decisions in our life. And so I think that's part of the key is we can't judge the decisions they make. All we can do is come alongside and try to live life with them, if you will, and help them overcome the decisions. And my son was blessed. My wife and I have been there his entire life. We've stayed near. We come alongside him. We try to help and guide him get over those bad decisions. And we've been blessed that none of his decisions have been so life-altering that he couldn't overcome them.
Well, one of the biggest problems with foster care that I've learned is creating stability for the children. And some of that instability seems to be, or is definitely, sibling separation. Is that still an issue for those within your care?
I believe it will. I think that the biggest challenge as we go forward is helping and convincing these residents that they're loved, and yet there's consequences when they break the rules. When any of us break the rules, there's consequences, and yet that doesn't take the fact that we love them. I have concern on how that's gonna work and how we're gonna do that, and it's going to be a case by case being with each individual, and we have to understand that the trauma that they've experienced. With the studies that we're able to do now, we have medical science that based on the trauma you experience, how it actually affects the growth of the brain. And so this may be an 18, 19-year-old, but their brain may be developed as a 10, 11-year-old. And how do you work with that? It's very, very, what we're trying to do is not easy in any way. It's not but it's necessary in my opinion. It's what I feel God's called us to do, if we want to get down to the bottom line.
We're willing to take someone right at 18 or someone a couple years later than that. So it's possible that the siblings are in the same kind of mindset of when they want to join something that like we're doing. We could possibly, handle the sibling situation. So it's a great question, but like Bryan said, it's a challenge that we'll have to explore as we learn more.
So as we've talked here, it seems like there's a consensus that the entire foster care system needs to be reformed somehow. But the bottom line is, how do we reduce as a society the need for foster care?
Well, for me, it starts with the family. It starts with the mother and father in the house. That's just the basic starting place. I feel that's very I know in my own situation, and I just have one child, the difficulty, I couldn't imagine trying to raise my son by myself. The balance of my wife and myself is important. And, how do we as a society, as a culture, influence families and improve the strength of the family? It's a challenge. There's so many things that are breaking and have broken the family apart. And I think you have to get down to the root causes. And again, I think that's that's a challenge, and it's hard. It's difficult.
Yeah, and I'd also add putting more money into mental health care, putting more money into helping people get over the trauma in their life. There's something we don't have enough from our federal government or state government or local government going towards mental health. And it's also, we don't have enough mental health professionals is also an issue. So if someone's got a issue that they need to deal with, that they deal with it earlier in life, they'll have more success than if it just gets worse and worse over time.
Well, obviously you guys are on the front end of this process, but on the other side of it, how do you envision, have you had an idea, a thought in your mind on what success would look like for these young adults and for the program?
Well, yeah, I think success, as I mentioned earlier, is that these statistical outcomes are not happening. And so just on a simple basis, they're not incarcerated. They're not pregnant. They're not homeless. They're not unemployed. That they have a career, they have a direction, and they have a stability in their life. Ultimately, the hope would be that there would be a joy and a peace in their life. That they're going down a direction where they've chosen, and that leads to what they see as their success. And that's different for each. That's different for each person. I mean, the three of us on this call have different ideas of what success is, and it's not for either one of us to tell the other. And again, the bottom line though is joy and peace.
And the very, very big picture, the boldest picture of if God hopes and wants to make that happen would be it's spreading, as Ryan said earlier. That would go beyond Tucson, beyond what we're doing, to other cities and other situations. Veterans, just on and on, all the different ways that churches could be helping and being involved in the community with the extra land that they have. Often they do have the extra land, so it'd be a great way to get their own church, bonding, and also to help others.
Well, that leads me into my last question. What can communities, churches, nonprofits, community organizations do to support a ministry like yours or to start their own similar ministry?
Well, the first thing they can do is reach out and connect with us, and again, it would be up for to learn where their interest is. A team, an individual could come out during a construction project and help, depending on where their interest is. We have huge need from data areas. We need keeping track of our email list, putting out newsletters, just going on and on and on. Right now, I'm working on this full time, and everyone else we have is volunteers. And so any and everything where there's an interest, social media, which is very important to get the word out, and so it's just up to the individual or the group of where their interest is. We'd love to, I'd love to have conversations, love to get on a Zoom call. If they're in Tucson, love to meet face to face for coffee and share, individually where they are, where their heart is. Churches, nonprofit organizations, like I said, I would love to guide and share our journey and go from there.
Yeah, different people have different talents, and a lot of those talents are available to connect far away, on the internet. We've got people in different states that have come along our side. The only ones that I can see that cannot help us long distance would be the construction people. The people are going to be hands-on, but we've been blessed that Bryan's got a lot of people who are just fired up to want to help us on that regard. So it's those other components, and of course financially. It takes a lot of money to make this happen as well, and it's valuable not only for the people that we have in the community we've already cited, but because it is like a pilot, a trial, a demonstration project. It's going to learn things. We'll learn things that we could share with others, and we can all grow from it.
So a specific need right now, we are starting the process of building our first model home. The very first thing we want to do is get a very powerful power washer and wash things down. We're going to put the units together. We need welder to be able to weld them together. We got to be able to cut the doors out, and so that that basic thing, and that's happening right away. We need a civil engineer. We need a landscape architect. Those are specific areas that people can get involved in. Can I tell? I can't do this without telling a parable. Everyone knows, or most people have heard the story of give a man a fish today. He'll be hungry tomorrow, teach him to fish, and he can fish for a lifetime. And I think we have to ask our question, or many are not asking the question, does he have access to the lake? Does he have a fishing pole? Does he have a permit? And so I call those justice issues. And I think many good people are not aware in our community, in our cities, in our country, that there's a lack of justice in many environments. So we answer that question of does he have access? The other thing, do we know whether has he been trained in order to manage the lake? Does he, if we pollute the lake, if we overfish the lake, he still doesn't have any fish. And so it's easy for people to say, well, Melvin, you decide, I'm going to help you, Bryan. Let's go fishing tomorrow. We can go fishing tomorrow and not catch any fish. You can say, okay, well, let's go Wednesday. We can go on Wednesday and one of us fall in the lake, the line break. How do we measure whether I've learned to fish? And so is it just if we catch fish? But as you go through the process of teaching me to fish, it takes a requirement of you. It requires a relationship. It requires your time and your effort. And so I think it's important that what we're saying, we're acknowledging that it's difficult. It's difficult to come alongside someone and live life with them. It's difficult to teach someone to fish. And I think what's happening is in many cases, very good people are saying, here's $10, here's $20, go buy your fish. But then we can't complain that they don't know how to fish if we're not willing to come alongside. And so I think we have to think about what is the outcome that we want. As we're coming alongside those of us who are called and feel a passion and a desire to help others, what are we willing to do? Are we willing to teach people to fish? And I think we can take that in whatever area that you're working. Those who are struggling need to be taught, and that takes time.
Well, that parable is definitely a good addition to this episode. I appreciate you adding that to this conversation. So our guests today have been Bryan Benz and Pat Quinn from Wholistic Transformation of Tucson. And I'll be posting a link to their organization in the description so that you can contribute or find out how to contact them to volunteer if you feel led to do so. So thank you, gentlemen, for joining me today. I appreciate it.
Thank you for the time and giving us this opportunity to share. And again, I'd love to connect with anyone, anywhere, to be able to walk this journey and learn from what they're doing and obviously share what we're doing.
Thank you, Melvin. I love the format of your show and the work you've done in the past. And I hope you're blessed with many more shows in the future, because you're doing good work here. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I really appreciate that. So that's it for today's edition of Stories from Real Life. Join us again next time for another storytelling journey. Until then, don't forget to shine some light wherever you go. That was another edition of Stories from Real Life with your host, Melvin E. Edwards. Join us again next time for more stories about more things than you can imagine. Some of those true stories may even be about real life. See you next time.